net result is always good for gay people, always.
As a candidate, I was just a 29-year-old guy with a cute dog and a beautiful wife, and I was running for office, and I wanted to improve our roads in our district, and that was it. It turns out that group had a budget of at least a couple $100,000 to just alone to target me.
It was dirty, but effective. It worked.
Some of that dirt was exposed when internal election documents were leaked straight from CODA offices.
It turned out it was an intern that the leftist think tank had working for them. And I spoke with him. He said, I keep seeing all these people coming into our offices, the Democratic leadership from the legislature, these rich guys that are coming in, the trial lawyers coming in, they keep coming in and meeting. And afterwards I have to clean up the room. I was seeing these documents and I was scared to death.
One document exposes apparent arrogance and even contempt CODA had toward voters. Plans for an Educate the Idiots campaign. The memo states the AFL-CIO would be tasked to educate the idiots and clearly labels one so-called idiot group minorities.
Educate the Idiots campaign. Really insulting stuff.
Just below Educate the Idiots, plans to abuse the court system with legal maneuvering to wage distraction lawsuits against Republican candidates and organizations before the election. Ironically, the left's hypocritical champions of transparency dubbed it the leave no trace strategy. The Democrat majority wasted no time in expanding the role of government in virtually every aspect of life. It was open season on economic liberty and personal liberty, even declaring certain faucets, toilets, and shower heads illegal.
Again, everything that goes on in my house, they want to regulate what sort of toilets are in my bathrooms and what kind of light bulbs are in my lamps, raise women's taxes more. They want to tell me what doctor I can go to, what health plan I can have. That is the war on women, somebody controlling everything we do.
Whatever CODA wants is what happens.
State Senator Greg Brophy has seen regulations creep into nearly every aspect of Colorado life.
You know, telling kids what they can and can't eat at school, all of the renewable energy mandates, significantly empowering the trial lawyers.
The Democrat takeover predictably spread into green energy mandates, leading to higher prices for Coloradans.
The legislature recently has passed bills that have raised utility rates in rural areas, and that was done just to really satisfy the environmentalists in this coalition.
It's nothing new. Coloradans are rejecting these policies, but to the gang of four's political operation, the politicians who support them are expendable and instantly replaceable. Such was the case with Colorado Democrat Governor Bill Ritter.
So they put in place renewable energy mandates. They put in place restrictions on oil and gas industry. Nothing went through the legislature, nothing got through the governor's office that didn't have the stamp of approval from the radical environmental movement. It was so extreme that he couldn't run again.
For all of Ritter's unpopular, damaging, and costly policies, he was richly rewarded.
Ritter went on to earn a $300,000 a year salary paid for by Pat Stryker of the CSU.
Ritter was installed at the Center for the New Energy Economy, working with politicians and bureaucrats to create job-killing environmental policies.
They are changing Colorado, and certainly, in my opinion, for the worse.
I really don't see what the point of raising utility rates to the point where companies don't want to move into Colorado and we can't create jobs in Colorado.
Governor Hickenlooper signed a bill he himself admitted was flawed. Now utilities are forced by the government to use renewable energy to power 20% of their output. To pay for it, they were allowed to raise rates on those who could least afford it.
The 2013 legislative session was the most partisan, most brutal, most activist, and most elitist I have ever seen.
There was estimates that the cost of energy because of 252 on rural Colorado will be a 50% increase. Mom and pop farmers can't continue to farm if their energy costs are going to be going up by 50%.
It was definitely an attack on liberty. We went from having the cheapest energy rates in the Rocky Mountain West to having the second highest, only behind California.
Now we have one of the highest renewable energy mandates in the country. This is amazing that it happened here.
Billionaire Pat Stryker backed a company which received $400 million of taxpayer money.
Pat Stryker was definitely a founder of CODA, and Pat Stryker also was the bankroller for Abound Energy, a company that was funded from Barack Obama's stimulus money, and now it sits abandoned in Fort Collins.
Well, I would refer you to the Department of Energy for specifics about any particular loan. Inherent within these kinds of investments that there is risk.
The government has decided that it's going to pick winners and losers in the energy area.
4,100 gallons of toxic waste was left sitting in the Stryker-backed green energy company.
And even though many of these people are billionaires or multi-billionaires on their own, if they can utilize our money to basically accomplish their social agenda, that's a great thing for them.
Every facet of the state's $30 billion a year oil and gas industry is under assault by CODA and the Gang of Four. So much so that Governor Hickenlooper hedged on his fracking opposition when the issue threatened him and Senator Mark Udall's re-election. It follows the CODA trend to mask true intentions during an election year.
The environmentalists have also pushed to limit fracking in Colorado and really make it more difficult for the oil and gas companies to develop energy, fossil fuel energy in Colorado.
The infrastructure of the Gang of Four attracted scores of environmental radicals. Now these self-described fractivists, like fractivist.org founder Shane Davis, organize to push their agenda onto pro-growth towns and county governments.
Tonight, the fight to form our 51st state. Some in northern Colorado want to secede from the state of Colorado.
Voters in 5 counties ended up voting in support of secession efforts to form a 51st state. It underscored a deep and growing divide between liberal elites and grassroots Coloradans. The radical agenda the Gang of Four had thrust on the state had finally reached a tipping point.
Jared Polis wants to outlaw fracturing, which will run every major oil and gas company out of the state of Colorado.
The Democrats Polis helped to put in the State House found another way to help manipulate elections.
It was nicknamed by most of the folks on my side of the aisle the same-day voter fraud.
Chris Holbert watched the Democrats pass one of the most alarming voter laws in America.
So I could go live here in this community, but I could go to a different House or Senate district around the state and tell the county clerk I intend to live in the district, and they would be required to give me a live ballot, not a provisional ballot. When they passed this new voter law, it was to make it so elections were much more malleable, much more easy to manipulate. All you have to say is, I intend to live here. That's all. I intend to live here, and they'll let you vote. But that's what you can do once you take over the state government.
Voter laws like this open the door to widespread fraud, and the sponsors don't seem to mind one bit.
So basically, if you're willing to take a 3-week vacation in Colorado, you're legal to vote anywhere you want to say.
Flouting the law is nothing new in the Mile High City, where Governor Hickenlooper served as mayor. Though Colorado's marijuana laws prohibit open consumption, young Denverites and new transplants openly violate the rules.
You can do pretty much whatever you want here. You stay here, smoke weed, and you can enjoy the sun, enjoy the rain. You can play Magic, the card game down the bottom of the hill, the Magic Circle. You just come here to have a good time. I mean, hell, coming on a holiday is beautiful. Christmas, 4th of July, all of it. I mean, there's always people up here.
I recently did a post on my front door and on social media that I was not going to allow people to enter my business that smell or reek the marijuana. I did have people vandalize my business, rip stuff off my building, spit on my building, I had a threat.
Gang of Four member Jared Polis welcomes the young and aimless to Colorado with open arms, where they're gathering in pot enclaves like this park in Denver, known as Stoner Hill.
It's going great. Come out and visit, please. We want your tourism money. Come show solidarity, even if you don't buy or smoke marijuana.
Whatever your views on marijuana legalization, and for the record, I support medical marijuana. The broader political and social engineering motives of radical Jared Polis and his Gang of Four colleagues are certainly cause for concern. Polis supports federal legislation to turn every state into Colorado. He wants to impose Stoner Hill on the rest of the country, a sanctuary for Democrat voting dependents, whether you want it or not. And Polis has the Obama administration and its selective enforcers at the Justice Department on his side to push the boundaries to the extreme. Denver has become a sanctuary for chaos in more ways than one. Instead of touring the chaos of America's crumbling borders in the summer of 2014, President Obama and Governor Hickenlooper decided to play pool at a bar. The optics spoke volumes.
Believe me, immigration policy for America is now totally political. The Democrat Party that looks at those people coming across and say, you know, those are all undocumented Democrats.
In Congress, Jared Polis is pressuring the president to end deportations.
We have made no pressure to the president to use the authority that he already has to extend deferred action, to halt deportations.
Latinos have not only been increasing in their potential to vote, but they have been voting increasingly Democratic over the last 10 years in Colorado.
I was born to Filipino immigrants in Philadelphia. My parents came here legally. It wasn't easy. They learned English, they learned our history, they followed our rules. They came here with the American dream and cherished our constitutional republic. That's the same experience that millions of law-abiding immigrants and their families share across America. But progressives like Jared Polis say none of that matters. It's the sheer numbers of future Democrat voters that counts. It's about cheap labor and political gain.
Enterprise cities, so it's kind of looking at an immigration lead example, to be able to frame a city like Detroit. To say Detroit, under direct charter for the federal government, it's like a charter city, what they do in Chicago or Honduras, as a charter city, would be able to effectively have their own immigration policy.
You can be arrogant when you recognize that, you know, you've got this powerful force behind you.
That sentiment rings true for Governor Hickenlooper when he referred to some of his own constituents as backwards for having beliefs that differ from his own.
We have some of the same, you know, backwards thinking in the kind of rural western areas.
Cake shop owner in Colorado now facing fines or even jail time after he refused to bake a cake for a same-sex wedding, student with religious beliefs. So does becoming a business owner mean you have to check your convictions at the door?
As the state considered fining Christian business owners for their religious beliefs, Governor Hickenlooper appeared to issue a threat to Colorado voters, suddenly granting a reprieve to a convicted mass murderer who killed 4 people in a family pizza parlor.
Governor John Hickenlooper appears to drop hints that he would give the Chuck E. Cheese killer Nathan Dunlap full clemency after Election Day if Hickenlooper loses, criticized by some as poor leadership.
Even though 2/3 of Coloradans support the death penalty, it didn't matter. CODA and the Colorado Democrats had enjoyed alarming success and encountered few roadblocks. But all that came crashing down when they began messing with the Second Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, brazenly forcing liberal East Coast values on freedom-loving Rocky Mountain citizens.
In 2013, we had 2 gun control bills pushed by billionaire Michael Bloomberg from New York City come to Colorado.
They wanted to take Michael Bloomberg's gun laws and put them here in Colorado.
We do know that when the session started after the Newtown, Connecticut shooting, that he did get phone calls from Mayor Bloomberg. And he's lied about those.
Well, let's stick to the facts. I never talked to Mayor Bloomberg. Again, that's been out in the press and all this stuff. And just for the record, you know, I met Mayor Bloomberg when I was mayor, and I know him. I think he's a pretty good mayor.
You know, you'll catch your child reaching into the cookie jar. They'll say, no, I'm not stealing any cookies. That's what Governor Hickenlooper did. His hand was literally covered in crumbs everywhere, and he had chocolate all over his lips. And what? Mayor Bloomberg? No, he didn't talk. I don't know, who is he?
Governor Hickenlooper even blamed his signing of the gun law bill on one of his staff.
One of my
staff made a commitment that we would sign it if we got passed.
But the Colorado Secretary of State's own website reveals that Bloomberg's group, Mayors Against Illegal Guns, registered several lobbyists, including the Gang of Four's own strategist, Ted Trimpa, who has been nicknamed Colorado's answer to Karl Rove.
But Ted Trimpa, who is the field general for the Gang of Four, the Colorado Democracy Alliance, was in the building to usher through the two Bloomberg gun control bills. And those were the two controversial bills that passed.
The weaknesses include arrogance. The 2013 legislative session was arrogant. There's no other word for it.
While Democrat legislators did the bidding of New York's gun control crusading mayor and took calls directly from Vice President Joe Biden, they refused to respond to Colorado's own citizens, and they badmouthed Second Amendment activists in the halls of the state legislature.
Their minds were turned off. They weren't interested in logic. They were interested in paying back Michael Bloomberg and giving him and Tim Gill and Pat Stryker and the leftists who got them in office.
One Democrat senator callously dismissed a rape victim who came to the State House to testify against gun control measures that disempower women.
What would have been different if I had been carrying a weapon I was licensed to carry at night?
She was raped on a campus, on a college campus. And she said if I would have been able to have something to protect me, I think I would have been raped. And the committee chairman told her, no, you probably would have still been raped.
I just want to say that actually statistics are not on your side, even if you had had a gun.
Oh, elected sheriffs came out against them. They weren't heard. They weren't listened to. The governor wouldn't return the phone call. They weren't even allowed to testify in any great way when the bills were shoved through all on the same day.
Another representative said in a floor debate that women should be able to protect themselves with a whistle and a pen, so we can blow our whistle.
That's why we have call boxes. That's why we have safe zones. That's why we have the whistles.
I'm pretty sure nobody's going to pay attention to a whistle.
There's a rather well-known CEO of Senate President Morris on the Rachel Maddow show admitting that he had told his caucus, the Senate Democrats, to effectively ignore the constituent concerns and move forward on that slate of gun control legislation.
We get the point that some of these folks think their Second Amendment rights are being abridged, and even though we know darn good well that's not true, it's not worth getting into that argument with them, and so just move along and don't read any more of these things. You absolutely have to.
The operatives for the Democrat Party in this state used every issue they could but guns to try and gain power. They knew that if they ran it straight up the middle and said, we want the majority so we can have gun controls, they'd lose. But the very first thing they did when they got the majority in both the State House, State Senate, and the governorship is ran gun control down Colorado's throats.
Whether the legislation was good or bad in the eyes of constituents, at the moment where they demonstrated that arrogance of don't listen to your constituents, I think the world turned against them.
The gun control legislation that was passed in Colorado was not reflective of what the constituents in certain of those districts wanted to see. What they didn't realize is we have the recall in Colorado.
Finally, living under the machine the Gang of Four created had reached a tipping point. Coloradans reclaimed control from the shadowy elites and launched a grassroots effort to take their state back.
The pro-recall forces were outspent 11-1, and we won and recalled 2 state senators.
The public rose up and said absolutely not and recalled the president of the Senate, the Democrat leader of the Senate. And the Gang of Four said, thank you very much for your service. Thank you for getting accomplished this agenda item for us, but you're expendable and we don't need you anymore.
Thanks to the 2010 Supreme Court decision in Citizens United versus FEC, Coloradans could finally fight back. Citizens United restored First Amendment protections to political speech, ensuring the rights of citizens and grassroots activists to join together and speak with one voice. The playing field is finally level. Activism and money from the grassroots, along with the will of the people, won. The Gang of Four and the governor's good friends Bloomberg and Biden were shown the door.
No response tonight from former New York Mayor Michael Bloomberg about his controversial remarks about Colorado.
Here's what he said, quote, "The NRA went after 2 or 3 state senators in a part of Colorado where I don't think there's roads. It's as far and rural as you can get."
Well, the mayor may not realize the recalls happened in Colorado Springs and in Pueblo. The Springs is the second largest city in the state, while Pueblo is the 7th.
We have plenty of paved roads. What it's going to take is to worry about principle and not personality. To be less enamored with a politician and more enamored with liberty and how we get there.
Given the success of the uprising against gun control under Citizens United Freedoms, it is not surprising Senator Udall proposes to reverse free speech across the country. His amendment would allow the government to regulate speech, creating a system just as broken as the so-called Colorado reforms.
The most radical proposal that has been considered by the United States Senate in the time I have served. If this proposal were to pass, its effects would be breathtaking.
What happened in Colorado is now taking shape in other states. Many operatives are being sent to places like Texas and Virginia to turn red states blue and take the Colorado model across state lines.
I mean, think of this. Colorado, the West, has become a poster child for gun control. How does that happen? Here is the West where people came out to make their fortunes mining and drilling and growing crops and raising animals. And now our property rights are being diminished. The message is, if it happened here, it can happen in every state in the country. And that's what we need to be careful of. This Colorado model is being exported.
There's reason to believe until it fails that it's going to continue to succeed.
If they can do it in Texas, Colorado's one thing, but if they can do it in Texas, Republicans are doomed.
Battleground Texas, a group that is formed to turn Texas blue.
Battleground Texas organizers have already been exposed utilizing potential illegal tactics and confidential information to boost Democrat turnout.
It shows an organizer with the Democratic Political Action Committee, Battleground Texas, allegedly breaking the law. If they do to Texas what they did to Colorado over the course of years, game over. Because you take all the presidential swing states, put them together, and they don't match what Texas does in a national election. Texas is going to be the prize.
And Texas is not alone. The infiltration of the once reliable red state of Virginia is all but complete. Groups such as Progress VA started in Colorado. Now these groups are thrusting an ultra-liberal agenda to transform Virginia. They're the ones that helped elect Clinton confidant and native New Yorker Terry McAuliffe as governor, setting the stage to deliver the state to Hillary in 2016.
What happens when CODA comes to your state is a liberal agenda is implemented. Taxes go up, fees go up, you lose your individual liberty. They did it in Colorado, and they can do it in almost any state.
The shady architects of the Rocky Mountain heist caught Colorado citizens off guard through secrecy, deception, and coordination. But the good news is, here in my state, we're doing everything we can to fight back and return power to the people. We know what we're up against, and now you do too.
Anybody else get goosebumps when the whole map turned blue?
Yeah.
Okay, so now that you're sufficiently terrified, let me show you what's going on here in Missouri. Okay, we'll start there. The key to their success really is data. What they did was they had these 527s. Since the candidates couldn't fund their own campaigns, Pat Stryker and the Gang of Four, they all funded like 30 nonprofit organizations. Coalition for a Better Colorado was one, there's a bunch of others. But what they did was they started pulling in all this public voter data, and then the AFL-CIO, the environmentalists, the unions, they all gave their voter data, and then the rest of them hired 750 walkers, gave them PDA and a list, and they walked around neighborhoods they didn't have data on, and they'd knock on people's doors and say, when you vote in the primary, do you usually vote for Democrats or Republicans? Really? Okay. What about the general? Okay, great. And they get more information, like the name and the age and the sex. And they spent 4 days and $220,000 canvassing areas. And they took all this data, and then the AFL-CIO, I forgot about this, look at this. 2,774 activists from 189 locals knocked on 75,000 doors, made 200,000 phone calls, blah, blah, blah. You can see that. That's a lot of information they got. Meanwhile, all this data, they put all this data in one big database, and they were able to look at a district on a micro level and say, we don't need to go to these houses, we do need to go to these houses, we can skip these houses, we need to have somebody at this house every day, we only need to send a mailer to this guy, call this guy, get donations from this guy. To give you an idea how much they can do with this data, there's a story in New York about a guy who works for Fox News. He got a knock on the door one day, and there were some progressive activists there. And he opens the door and he says, look guys, you know, I'm not gonna, they're like, no, we're not here for you. We're here for your wife. And they knew his wife had a job that directly related to an issue they were advocating for. And so they talked to her about lobbying her representative. They didn't care about him. They wanted her. That's how detailed their data is. They knew which houses to go to. Now, when I tell people about this, I say, why aren't we competitive? Why aren't we running people in these districts, in these Democrat districts? There's a guy in Kansas City who got pulled over by the Stadies because he skipped a court date for having no license on his car and no insurance. And when the Stadies pulled him over, they found weed and a pipe in his car. And he confessed to that, and we ran nobody against him.
Gosh.
We ran nobody, and I was told, why didn't we? Well, that's a reliably safe Democrat district. I'm here to tell you, there is no such thing as a reliably safe district anymore, and this guy will explain it to you. Ray Martinez has the life story that political consultants dream of. Former orphan, shined shoes as a kid in City Hall and told his family one of these days, I'm going to own those shoes. I'm going to work in City Hall. Vietnam vet, former police officer, retired as a police officer, and became mayor, worked in City Hall, and left with a 70% approval rating. Can you ask for a better candidate? So, the roundtable got a hold of him and started a website called Ray Likes to Travel. And on this website, all they did was put out information about how much Ray flew around the country on the taxpayer dime. He went here, he went here, he went here, he went here. Ray likes to travel and he likes the taxpayers to pay for it. Then they hammered him on spending money at the bars, at the taxpayer expense. What they didn't explain was Ray would get back to the hotel after meeting, and he was traveling to all these cities to sell his city to businesses there to get them to move to his city. He wasn't just flying all over the country, he was doing the business of the city. And after doing the business all day long, he'd get back to the hotel and the restaurant's closed, so he'd grab a hamburger at the bar or a meal at the bar. Roundtable didn't care. They made clear from the video they didn't care about the truth. All they did was tell people, Ray likes to travel, he likes to spend taxpayer money at the hotel bar. You're paying for that. By the way, he also spends a lot of money at the mini bar in his room, insinuating that he's going to the room and getting all drunked up. He would go work out in the morning, come back, grab water out of the mini bar. That's like, what, $7 in some hotels? So yeah, they went to work on him. When they started, he was up 17 points. They spent $500,000, and he lost by 15 points. They destroyed him because they had the right data, they knew who to target, they knew what the message was. Ted Trimpa says the temptation is always to swoon for the popular candidate, but a fraction of that money directed to the right state and local races could have flipped a few chambers. That's what their goal is. They don't want to spend a bunch of money on, on a Ted Cruz. They'll go and focus on a Danny Carroll in Iowa. Served in the House as Speaker Pro Tem, worked to amend the Iowa Constitution to defend marriage of one man, one woman, and believed gay marriage was a direct threat to the family. That got the attention of Tim Gill. And he started working on Iowa. And in 2006, the Democrats took the House and the Senate. Danny Carroll lost his seat. Now, when this was over, Carroll went back and he looked to see where his opponent got money from. Look at that. Denver, Dallas, LA, Malibu, New York, many others. What happened was Ted Gill was able to send an email and tell thousands of people to send money to this guy right here. His opponent needs to lose. We need to fund him. Nobody cares. Ted said to send money here. They send money there. And the money rolls in and people lose. We can skip that. That just shows you all the different places where it's going on. Now, they talked about Progress VA. Progress Now is an organization in Colorado. Progress Now said that it's all about building political power at the state level. We're trying to replicate our model in every state. Progress Now is a year-round, never-ending progressive campaign. So while our candidates win their campaign, they stop campaigning, they go do their business, Progress Now keeps campaigning all year long. Battleground Texas we talked about. Now, there are 7 keys to this machine, this progressive machine. The capacity to generate intellectual ammunitions, to mobilize for elections, to pursue investigations, to fight media bias, pursue strategic litigation. They talked about that lawfare. I've already been warned by my friends out in Colorado, you're going to get sued. Just count on it. They get sued a lot. Train new leaders and sustain a presence in new media. So in Missouri, Progress Missouri, part of Progress Now. So we have an organization in the state that is directly tied to the organization in Colorado and is funded by the progressives funding the Colorado crew. Missouri Budget Project is another leftist organization that has never seen the tax cut they liked. It is run, actually, I think it's still run by a guy who was an intern with the Lyndon Johnson administration. He worked with LBJ. Mobilize for elections, train new leaders, manage the media. You've got Missouri Pro Vote. Anybody heard of them? Short for Missouri Progressive Vote. Organizing for America used to be Organizing for Obama. They just took his whole machine, flipped it over, made it state level. Now, has anybody heard of Missourians Organizing for Reform and Empowerment? This is not unusual. People all across the state, they haven't heard of any of these people. This is what happened in Colorado. Republicans just woke up one day, they'd lost everything, they had no idea what happened. Have you ever heard of ACORN? Yes. ACORN's now called Missourians Organizing for Reform and Empowerment. Same group, different name. When all that went down and they lost all their funding, they just rebranded themselves. The Ferguson riots, Missourians Organizing for Reform and Empowerment. A lot of that was them, and they're still down there. Strategic litigation, you've got the Missouri Public Interest Research Group, a Ralph Nader outfit. They're always working on something.